and by Ameriprise Financial and the Mirius Group of Financial Advisors, which includes but is not limited to John Everson and Phil McCoy, who's with us via telephone, along with our co-hosts who are here in studio, Bill Stubblefield, the Admiral.
Good morning, Rob. Have you ever thought, if you appeared before Magistrate Show, how high your bail would be?
Mine personally?
Yeah, yours personally.
A person in general?
No, yours personally.
I think mine would be pretty low, and the reason is this. It would be pretty easy to tell, like if I was in the day report center, if I was reporting to work every day. Like you would know really clearly and plainly whether I was here. It would be so apparent that the bail could be set so low as to be negligible. This is my theory on that.
Did you follow that logic, John?
Actually, no.
So you wouldn't have to worry about me skipping town because you'd know where I was supposed to be every day, Monday through Friday, between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. It would be so easy to find out if I was here. If I had skipped town, then you would know instantly when you opened up this program if I was.
Your location is easily traced, is what you're
One
saying.
would say yes.
From 6 to 10.
Yeah, you would know plainly. So my bail should be incredibly low, if any at all is even needed for a person of my integrity.
There could be extenuating circumstances, and you just hit upon it, integrity.
Yes, which is without question. Most would say who have met me even twice. Mr. Gilstrap, good morning to you.
Good morning.
We learned over the weekend with John that the deadline date has been extended, and that date is now when? For the next
May 15th.
book. May 15th.
Bumped it a month.
Which I think is better than tax day.
Well, it is. It was a tough month, and then that illness I got hit with that kept me out of the studio for a week. It's okay. I can't.
And honestly, Bill, between the two of us, we're not really comfortable with him being here now, are we?
Exactly right. Yeah.
But that has nothing to do with illness. That's just in general.
But you made the invitation to him without consultation with me. So, and I sit closer to him.
Well, I actually tried. I called you at 3:20 in the morning, and you wouldn't answer your phone for some reason. Via telephone, he always answers when I call. Financial Phil. Good morning, Philly.
Good morning, guys. How are you all?
We are quite well. How about yourself?
I'm living the dream, sir.
Well, I know that's what you say. So, Phil?
It's true, Rob. It's true. It's a beautiful day out. Spring is here.
I'm sorry. We've had 2 80-degree days in a row. I've sweated. I've gotten bit by a mosquito, and I've seen a yellow jacket. Summer's done. I'm ready for autumn.
That's a pretty quick white flag raise right there, dude.
Yeah. I'll be complaining about it soon, but for right now, I'm tickled to death. I don't have to worry about 20 degrees anymore.
So are you guys getting any flies? Are you noticing flies?
Not yet.
My deck on Saturday, the railing top, were swarming with flies. They were all over the place. I'm curious. Now, after we had Ann kill Fern on last year, John, for the Halloween show, like the next day I had black flies in my house. Like I was like Damien from The Omen or some poltergeist, whatever was going on there. I had black flies in my house for like a week I had to try to kill and get rid of. So I'm not sure if this is like some kind of possession thing.
I was wondering after we talked to Michael Knoll about the haunted Apollo, whether or not you were going to get stuff in your house.
I hadn't thought of that, but yes, when I got home Saturday, there were black flies on top of my deck.
There you go.
There had to have been a couple hundred of them.
You see, you invoke dead people.
Yeah, and then I keep
get
the flies. I'm going to stop talking to people about haunted stuff because it's killing me. But I have boar bees, you know, those big bumble bees.
Yeah.
So they love my deck, so I'm out there with a tennis racket swatting at those. Wasps love the underneath of my deck too, so I'm out there with the can of the spray. I was active this weekend. There's a lot of that.
I tell you the story about our carpenter bees. When we lived in Vienna, we didn't know we had carpenter bees until we heard this racket. It's like somebody's firing a machine gun at our house. And we go out, and it was a woodpecker that was taking out the fascia board along the side of our house. And the reason is that's where the carpenter bees are. So it's a little salad bar full of carpenter bees, and they're just tearing it up. So they're doing a lot of damage. And they come back year after year.
I have found this out.
So it's the gift that keeps on giving.
They're so hard to get rid of. But I haven't. The woodpecker who was destroying my deck for a couple summers, he's not come back. I don't know where he went. I'm glad he's gone. And the borer bees, we have to get the guy to spray up into the holes that they bore into your deck every year and whatever. It's just a fun part of being a homeowner. just one thing after the next. Like Phil has to this year. He's going to finally take care of his yard because they're going to have graduation parties
I
in it,
knew
Phil.
it was coming. Once you get a new deck, I knew that was coming.
Are you going to take care of your yard this year, Phil?
Yeah, Phil, are you?
I always take care of my yard.
It's not what I hear.
Including dandelions, Phil?
Well, this year I'm going to take care of the dandelions, but only for this year. Then I'm going to go back to dandelion soup. But we're having a party, and my wife has mandated that we get the yard taken care of. So,
Does your wife listen to Rob on the morning, giving you advice about your lawn?
Well, no, I don't know. She's normally busy at work. Sometimes she goes back and listens, or she listens in the evening. But I did tell her, last year how much grief I caught from Rob yard shaming me because I didn't fertilize my yard. And she didn't have a problem with it last year. But we're going to have a fairly large party this year, and so she said, you know what, I think for this year only that maybe we should get this yard taken care of. But I will say this, it's going to look the same because by the time I cut my grass religiously, and even though it may have clover in it, you can't really tell. It looks like everybody else's grass. But this year, probably due to Rob shaming, so I think, Rob, you owe me some money. I've got to get this yard fertilized.
How's your front door? How's that look?
My front door.
Your front door. If you're gonna have a party, the front door makes a statement about your house. You got to have a good front door.
Rob.
You get that painted recently?
Got to clean those windows.
Why don't you two, both of you now, mind your own business?
How's that front door looking, Beth? Beth, how's that front door looking?
Be outside. Party's outside, peeps. Walk around back.
People will judge your windows.
I don't know, Phil. I think maybe some home improvement.
Shall we include the bathrooms as well? People go inside for bathrooms.
Unless you're getting porta johns.
Just got redone. Yeah. Bathrooms just got redone. So
all of them, just the one on downstairs.
Just the one the public uses.
They all got done. Yeah, the bathrooms are new.
Phil's house is like Maria's house. You can just stop in anytime you want, use the restroom, get a snack. Phil make you a sandwich.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We're a very welcoming family. If you come to our house, you're going to get offered food. You have a clean restroom. You're welcome in. We're very welcoming people.
That sounds like an Italian house to me, Phil.
Well, maybe. Yeah, I'm a little Southern West Virginia home place going on there. We like people to come visit. As long as it's not like 10 o'clock at night.
You just have to beat his daughter in a game of volleyball first.
Good luck with that one, right? And she's going to play at Shepherd, right?
She is. She's really excited. She's going to Shepherd. That was a long, difficult decision for her, but I think she made the right decision. She's extremely excited, as are we. You know, our whole family has gone to Shepherd. I went to Shepherd. My wife went to Shepherd. My oldest daughter, Abigail, who was on your show a few years ago, is getting ready to graduate from Shepherd. My in-laws went to Shepherd. My sister-in-law went to Shepherd. My niece has gone to Shepherd. So it is kind of like a family thing. So
That's cool.
We're really excited, as is she.
Very nice. As we look at the market futures this morning, Phil, I see a lot of red. S&P almost 1% in the negative. NASDAQ 1 1/3. Dow 0.6%. This follows a bad Friday and what's been a very bad month. For that matter. Yeah. At some point, these losses have to matter, don't they, Phil?
Well, they always matter. But, again, we're looking at long-term investors, and that's what we do. Now, if you're a day trader, you're probably feeling a lot of grief right now. As we retest, I think the lows for the year was around March 13th, and we bounced off that. So there's some technical analysis, which, first of all, we don't necessarily buy into, but technical analysis that would suggest that we'll bounce off of that yet again. But there's a lot of anxiety, and that anxiety comes through with that PCE, one of the pieces of our alphabet soup report on Friday that says, hey, inflation trickled up just slightly. It was a little bit worse than expected. And then the incorporation of 25% tariffs on imported automobiles and their parts. And now we have Wednesday coming up where there's supposed to be more tariffs announced. So there's a lot of negative momentum going, and it kind of gets us thinking or concerned about stagflation, which is a slowing economy in conjunction with higher interest rates, and that really puts the Federal Reserve in a bind. So, but Wednesday is a huge day to see what these tariffs are going to be. And however, there's half the people think that would be long-standing, the other half would think whatever it is, good or bad, and it would be good if they weren't as bad as expected. But it's going to be short-term just because of the history so far this year where a tariff has been announced and then it has been removed and then announced again and back and forth, kind of used as a negotiating ploy. And then there's another piece that thinks that, hey, these are going to be drastic tariffs. And even though they may not be long-standing, they're going to be so severe because they're being used as a negotiating ploy, and you start high when you negotiate, that they're going to be so severe that it's going to have a long-standing negative impact on our economy. And then by the time we absorb whatever these tariffs are going to be, we get the jobs report on Friday. So like most weeks that we have, it's full of economic reports and things that we can take a perception of what's going to happen to our markets. But in the long term, and we always focus on the long term, and it's boring. People a lot of times don't want to talk about the long term. But in the long term, and we step back and look at the S&P 500, which we maintain is the most important indice that should give you a better idea of what your equities are doing inside of your overall portfolio. It's like 401ks if you have a lot of mutual funds and it's not highly concentrated into a handful of stocks. The S&P 500 is the one that's going to give you the best information for that. But when we look at the S&P since 1980, that's 44 years, year over year, the S&P has been positive 33 or 44 years. So the 25% of the time it doesn't do well or it's negative. However, every one of those years has a fallback. Of course, that's common sense. So and if I was showing you the graphic that we show clients, it's represented as a red dot. So it's hey, every year has a red dot. But the average of those red dots or fallbacks in pullbacks is 14.2%, which is pretty drastic. So a 14.2% drawback is typical and it's normal. And we're not even near that yet. So as far as like panicking, no, we're not. And would I be shocked if we fell back 14, 15, 16% or even went into a bear market? No, I wouldn't be shocked. It's expected. Bear markets, bull markets, corrections are all part of the economic cycle or the cycle of our stock market, I should say. And we're not there yet, but there is a lot of volatility and a lot of emotion that's coming along with some of the reasons or our perceived reasons why our markets are falling.
Alyssa Farah Griffin, who was the head of the strategic communications in the first Trump presidency, made a statement recently that one of the things that struck her during that first term was that she realized that Donald Trump truly believes in tariffs and he really believes that they work and that they're a net positive and believes in them enough to the point where she doesn't think that this is a typical Trump thing where you're just kind of throwing stuff out and then you kind of move on to the next thing. That this is one of those things that's actually going to stick and remain. So let's assume that tariffs remain in place. Let's assume they're 25%, and maybe they get reduced over time. I don't know. Even so, if that becomes the new rule, your theory is still that businesses will figure out a way to still make a profit with that being the new rule, and then eventually the market catches up to that, and we go back to what is perceived as normal, even with something abnormal such as higher tariffs in place.
Yeah, because I mean, when you look at the what businesses do, or what the stock market is, at the end of the day, and John reminds us of this all the time. At the end of the day, the stock market follows company earnings or follows corporate earnings as a whole, and we've seen time and time again, regardless of the scenario. And if you don't have to look too far back, but at the money that companies made during COVID, when we weren't even allowed out inside of businesses or retail shops or movie theaters or restaurants for quite some time, but they still made it through that period, and a lot of them prospered through that period. So companies find a way to make money. Now, they find a way to make money sometimes that's off-putting to us as consumers. Shrinkflation, we used to talk about shrinkflation a lot. That's off-putting, but that's a way that they're going to earn profits. And you will look at automobiles maybe, and this is just an example. I don't know that this will happen, but most likely will. But components of the parts will become less expensive so they can control those costs, or maybe cheaper think again back to COVID when there was a chip shortage, and you know how everybody's engine shuts off for a brief period of time now with new vehicles when you stop at a stop sign or a red light. Well, that went away for a little bit. So those vehicles produced during COVID, they say, hey, we can't get these chips, that technology that whatever it is that causes these vehicles to do this, or that we want our vehicles to do this. So we're just going to create them without it. So they'll find ways around that in order to still get to the consumer and fill those needs or wants or desires from the consumer. But it could be, you know, you get less of a product or you get worse of a product, and in part, yeah, it may be more expensive as well. The whole thing about, and you know, I've said this to a few clients, I'm not for nor against tariffs, because I don't feel as if I know enough to play out what tariffs would do for 4 to 5 years. I don't really know. I can't say or predict that. But at the end of the day, tariffs become a consumer tax or a consumption tax at the end of the day. So if we were to say, hey, tariffs are going to be a consumption tax, yes, it's going to be a consumption tax ultimately for the most part on Americans, but we have a huge deficit and we need to increase revenue. I'd rather increase that revenue by a consumption tax than I would with income tax. So we see this as a potential boost for our markets when the income tax and corporate tax rates get discussed yet again. And if they remain low, and some of that justification is money from tariffs. So if they were to say, I'd rather have it as a consumption tax than an income tax, that's part of this whole tariff idea. And maybe we can get some concessions from other countries that we feel is unfair, or we can get something from them that we were unable to get in the past, along with increasing our revenue to help with this overall deficit. You can hear some on the side of in favor of tariffs kind of explain it that way, and that makes a little bit more sense to me, and it's more tolerable to me instead of just saying, hey, tariffs are the greatest thing ever, and I think they're great. I don't know that anything that's going to make things cost more money for the consumer, I don't think is great. But at the end of the day, if you said, yeah, but we've got a huge deficit and we need to increase revenue, and this is one way to do it, it's a little bit more tolerable if I hear it in those words. But so there's a lot of people that feel that way, and there's a lot of people that feel that the tariffs can help accomplish that, and there's a lot of people that don't. And I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not going to try to predict or estimate what's going to happen, because I don't know enough about tariffs to really make a strong prediction. But I know in the short term, it can and it probably will increase or be an inflationary pressure at the least. Increase inflation, and as far as the markets are perceived, and again, this could be short term, it could slow the Federal Reserve down, and if it slows the Federal Reserve down, it's going to be a drag on the markets. So that's kind of where we're at right now with tariffs.
Well, to put this in perspective, Ferrari has announced that its SUV, which normally starts at $430,000, they're raising it to $483,000, and the limited edition version of that, which starts at $3.5 million, is going up to $3.85 million. So this is the one Joy test drove before she bought the
Yeah,
she didn't like it. It wasn't comfortable. But, so these things have real impact. That extra.
Hopefully those people don't care.
People
don't care. Yeah.
Let me carry us back to the other demographics, the one that addresses all of us. CNBC has said that the first quarter GDP, gross domestic product, will be at 0.3%. What does that mean to us as investors and also the economy in general?
If that's accurate and if it's positive, then that would be a good sign. But if it continues, if our GDP is on a slope downward, it's going to bring that recession talk back into play. So we'll start being overly concerned about in a recession yet again, as we were in 22, which was a terrible year. But this time, I think the blame may not be on Jerome Powell. People would blame our administration because of the tariffs. But the GDP number, as it starts to look negative 2 consecutive quarters, along with a lot of other factors, which includes unemployment numbers, is what signals a recession. So that those recession fears are always difficult on markets. It's not necessarily when a recession's in place, that the markets struggle. It's leading up to the declared recession. So that, once the recession is declared, they kind of go back and give it a start date. Those are the dates that our market struggles so hard, is the fear of a recession. Now, once we're in a recession, the next step, remember we always talk about looking 3 to 6 months out, as our markets look 3 to 6 months out. Once we're in the recession, the next thing around the economic cycle is expansion, and our markets typically do pretty well as the recession is nearing an end. But leading into a recession, it's a drag on the overall market for sure as those recession talks continue. And there's been some chatter about a recession here lately, but for the most part, stagflation, I think, has got more Google searches and more mentions on the likes of MSNBC and CNBC and such.
Haven't the job numbers been pretty strong, though?
The job numbers, while weakening, are still solid. So they're not fantastic. They're weakening slowly, and that's kind of something the Federal Reserve was, they've kind of looked at that and saying, because that's a sign of disinflation, is a softening job market. So it hasn't fallen off the cliff. It has not. And that's why Friday's so important. Is it going to confirm a solid labor market, or is it going to suggest that it's starting to worsen quicker? And if it starts to worsen quicker, that's a concern. But just softening a little bit, slowing down a little bit, that's okay, because right now the overall labor market's in decent shape. You're correct; it is in decent shape.
Phil, how does the influx of federal employees that have recently been laid off?
They haven't hit yet.
They have not hit yet.
That won't hit till next month or month after.
Okay.
Phil,
and that's going to take a while to figure that out too, because some of those will seek other employment, and whether or not they'll be able to find other employment, what will the incomes be from that? So a lot of that's going to be difficult to determine.
My theory is used car prices will go up significantly as well, because two reasons. One, people will go, I'm not going to buy a new car, I'll buy a used car to avoid the tariff, and then that's going to create a demand for used cars, and there won't be enough supply, especially if people won't buy new ones, because new ones lead to used ones, Phil. And the other part of that is a dealer will say, I can jack up my used car price by another $1,000 or $2,000 because new cars cost so much more. Am I off?
Well, no, you're not. I think, anytime new car prices get more expensive as the used car prices, look back at COVID with the low supply of new vehicles, how expensive used vehicles became. I would think that for the most part, hopefully, dealers, instead of jacking up current prices, there'll be higher prices because they paid more for that used car. We did see a lot of that during COVID, where they paid way too much is a relative term, because who would buy it next, but they would pay more for used cars just to have that inventory. So yes, that would impact a few things. It's going to impact the new cars, of course, which in turn will impact the used cars. And that's also going to impact insurance premiums as well, which has been a problem because now they're insuring a higher dollar value. So that's one of the reasons why our auto insurance has been so high of late.
That was a wild time, man. My youngest son bought a new car during that, I guess, whole phase of the supply and demand problems with automobiles. And it's the only time in my lifetime, usually I would tell you, as soon as you drive a car off the lot, it loses whatever percentage in value. At that point, when you were driving your car off the lot, you were gaining 20, 25% in value on the car. I've never seen that. We'll never see that again, I'm going to guess. That was crazy.
I hope not, but it's possible. It just depends on the ability to produce new vehicles, and we didn't have that ability back then. But I don't like the COVID period, but I do like to go back and look at the economy and the stock market during COVID, because I think it could teach us a lot and maybe settle us down during times like this when we're so fearful of what's next.
And it also taught you to make sure you have a good supply of toilet paper.
Never get caught short again.
Okay, caught short. Phil, how do we reach you for more information today, sir?
You can reach us at 304-263-4343 or stop by and set us with an appointment at 1270 Winchester Avenue or right here in Martinsburg.
Thank you, Phil. Have a great day.